than 1 billion consumers currently use an iPhone. What are the odds that one of them is a stalking creep? Here's my story. Ever since I was a kid and got my first iPhone, I was obsessed. I loved everything about their iOS system to the sleek design. So when I turned 17, I applied to work at the Apple Store near me. It was like a dream come true when I got hired, but that dream soon became a nightmare. For better context, I was a female in high school, so this was only a part-time position for me. Anyway, I was working at the Apple Store one day. I was helping this customer who came in a lot, but never bought anything. There's nothing strange about that. We get a lot of people who come in just to browse the latest iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks. But this guy did more than just browse. He'd linger. And I would notice him sometimes just staring at me from across the store, eyes locked on me and not moving. He was an older man, maybe late 50s, bald as can be, and an ugly mustache. So when he came in that day asking to buy a new phone, I was shocked. I always thought he'd come in to look around and be a creep, but never buy anything. Well, of course, he came to me and asked me to help him get set up with his new phone. I was finishing the process up. I was restoring all his information from his old phone to his new phone through the iCloud. This is where it takes a while, so I told him he can come back in about 20 minutes and walk around the mall so he doesn't have to wait. He walked away, and in about 10 minutes, all of his information was transferred. I went through his contacts and photos just to make sure everything came over. Everything seemed to be good until I checked his photos. Now, normally, when I transfer information, I just browse quickly through the photos in case I see something private or sensitive. But in this case, all I saw were photos of me. Me helping people in the Apple Store, me sitting in my car during my lunch breaks, me out at restaurants with friends. I kept scrolling and nearly saw 100 photos of just me. I wanted to puke. He suddenly came back and asked how everything was going. That's when I started throwing fists. I was so angry and terrified of this man who violated me that punching him was all that I could think of. I landed a few good punches to his face and ribs before the fight was broken up. If they didn't tear me off, I would have tried to kill him. When police showed up to figure out what was going on, I explained everything. I showed them the phone and the hundreds of photos of me. Now, here's where it gets even crazier. The police ran his name in the system, and the guy was wanted for kidnapping and stalking in another state. I apparently was going to be his next victim. Thankfully, Apple didn't fire me for beating up a kidnapper. This was about 5 years ago, and I've since then gotten a new job. But, yeah, out of all the billions of people who buy iPhones, I had to get that guy. If you have PTSD from working in retail, then I suggest you not listen to this story. If you enjoy hearing the nightmares that come with retail, then listen to this. For context, I was a 19-year-old female living in Florida. I worked at the Apple Store during the summer to help pay for my community college. I was working there one day when a man came in. He was tall, mid-30s, dressed in sweatpants and a hoodie. He came right up to me, and I asked him how I could help. He handed me a broken cell phone. The front was completely smashed, and you could even see the insides of the motherboard. He said he needs this fixed ASAP because he sells eBay and Amazon products from his phone. I was inspecting the phone when I noticed that it was an Android. It was a Galaxy Note 20 to be specific. And I told him unfortunately we wouldn't be able to fix this phone because this was an Apple Store and we only dealt with iPhones. And I even suggested that he buy a new iPhone, but he did not like that answer. He started talking louder, saying this is a phone store and that we can fix any phone. It doesn't matter if it's a Galaxy or an iPhone. He started pacing back and forth in front of me. Some customers were looking over at us, noticing the situation escalating. He demanded that I get my manager over here right now. I brought my manager over. He listened to the situation and calmly explained to the man that this is an Apple Store and we only deal with Apple products. He suggested that he go to his carrier or to contact Samsung directly to see what they could do. At this point, the man's face was a deep shade of red. He was breathing heavily and very pissed off that we could not fix his phone. He started cursing at us and yelling at all the customers that this store doesn't care about its customers and how we are all pieces of shit. He stormed out of the store, but not before he looked at me in such a menacing way that I actually got goosebumps on my arm. Everyone in the store laughed and was glad that the angry man was gone. I wish this is where the story ended. I finished my shift at 7 p.m. that night. A coworker and I were walking to our cars parked at the back of the parking lot. I was telling my coworker I'll see her tomorrow when I was hit on the head with something hard, and I fell to the ground, looking up to see who had hit me, only to see the man from earlier standing over me. He had his broken phone in his hand, panting hard. He raised his phone and started beating me on the face with it. I cried out for help. My coworker came sprinting over to help me, but the man shoved her so violently that she flew back. He continued beating me with the phone. I remember my face was so cut up that blood was getting into my eyes. I was terrified that it was going to kill me. He went into my purse, grabbed my phone, and then smashed it onto the ground. It shattered. He bent close to me as I was bleeding on the ground and said, "Guess you need a new phone, bitch." He kicked me hard in the ribs and then sprinted off. By the time bystanders and my other co-workers got over to help me, the man was long gone. But thankfully, by the grace of God, he was caught 4 days later. By using the Apple Store security footage and eyewitnesses, police were able to track the man down and arrest him at his home. He's actually serving 5 years in prison for assault. I ended up having a broken nose, 3 stitches, and a fractured shoulder from the attack. Though it was violent, I did make a full recovery. So to all my friends who work retail out there, please be safe. You never know if someone you're dealing with is a ticking time bomb. Working retail has taught me to see both the good and bad in people, but it also taught me that some people are just downright scary. Here's my story. I'm an 18-year-old male. About a year ago, I was working at the Apple Store. We were located near a big city, which meant we were always busy. Around Thanksgiving time, I was working a closing shift. We were extra busy during that time because of the holiday promotions we had. And I was helping a couple set up their new iPhones when I noticed a man enter the store. Right off the bat, I could tell something was off. And I don't mean to be insensitive, but since we're located in a big city, we do see our fair share of homeless people, and that was my first impression of him. He had scraggly hair, his eyes were super wide, he kept opening and closing his mouth, and even from here, I could smell his BO. And I tried my best to ignore him and stay focused on my customers, until I noticed that he was staring directly at me. There were maybe 50 people in the store, and his gaze shot past all of them and landed on me. A bit nervous, I told my manager to keep an eye out for that guy, in case he tried to rob us or do anything crazy. I went back to helping my customers, and to my relief, I noticed that the man was now gone. And a few hours later, my manager and I started closing down the store. We thanked the last customer and began to lock the front doors. I was about to go into the back room and do my closing inventory count when I smelled a foul odor. It was foul, but familiar. And I scanned the store, but didn't see anyone. Both my manager and I didn't know where that smell was coming from, but we just ignored it because we wanted to leave. We were about to go to the back and count the inventory when we heard a loud noise coming from the far end of the store. We looked over and did not expect to see what we saw. It was that homeless man, but this time he was crab walking between the aisles and rows, completely naked, no clothes at all. He was speaking in a low voice, but we could hear what he was saying. He kept saying, "Apple, apple, apple, they're inside me." My manager and I froze in utter disbelief, and that's when he saw both of us and started crab walking quickly in our direction. When I tell you we sprinted like our lives depended on it to the back room, I am not exaggerating. We locked the back door. The whole time, the homeless man was banging on it, saying, "Apple, apple, apple, let me in, apple, apple, apple." My manager dialed 911, and we waited in horror behind the locked door for them to arrive. 20 minutes later, an officer showed up and was able to subdue the man without any problems. When he was in handcuffs, we looked at the security cameras and saw the homeless man hide behind one of our Apple displays for a few hours prior to us closing. That's how he was able to get in after we closed. The police found heavy drugs in his system. The homeless man was claiming that the Apple Store was a government organization and that they were implanting microchips in people's brains. That's why he was saying what he was saying. And I usually feel bad for homeless people who are down on their luck, but to be honest, that was one of the most disturbing experiences that I've ever had. Even a year later, I'm still haunted by him crab walking naked and speaking that weird gibberish. But that's the world of retail. You get the full spectrum of people, even the scary ones.